If My People Bible Reading Part 120. We just finished Part 119. I gave a graphic display. Here's the importance of it. It has become so obvious when you really get into the word here. You understand what how Yahweh thinks the more and more you stay in His word. So the prophecy was that no stone would be left unturned. Well, if you go to the Wailing Wall, how was those stones unturned? They weren't. They weren't. That was part of the rebuild up, and that's also part of where the Romans kept their legions and legions of people. Number two, there was prophecy that the area would be plowed under, which means no more foundation to build anything. You can't build a rock temple or anything that the Muslims built there, whatever they call that, whatever the Jewish people call that, the Temple Mount. The reason that you would, and it's prophesied, and it did happen, and you can even see it on modern Israeli Jerusalem maps. Take a look at the area where there's been some deep plowing that they can no longer build a temple. It's called a four-lane highway just north of the city of David, just north and part of the Ophel area. That's where the temple was. That's where the original David's was. That's where Solomon's was. That's where Nehemiah's was. That's where Herod's was. And it's the only area that was plowed under. Okay? It's the only area that was plowed under. And it's the only area that has access to the constant water necessary for the priests to do their cleansing process, because there's a lot of blood and gore that came out of that temple area from the constant sacrifice of animals. And Yeshua didn't want that to happen again. And his father didn't. His father and him are in an echad. They are oneness. So they're pretty smart. The only area today, then, it will never be messed up is a four-lane highway going through that area. So, you understand what I'm saying? It's there. Take a look at the map, modern map of Jerusalem, and no one's going to excavate an area under a four-lane highway. Jerusalem in the future, the millennium, will be used as a gathering area for those who hear and obey to come and bring their offertories. Their offertories not for blood sacrificing anymore. It is for giving to the Levites because they don't have to work for a living now for us. They work for a living for their Father, the Father in heaven, Abba Father. See how that all understand? Is it easy to understand now? So if you loved Yahweh so much and your temple was destroyed and Muslims came along 1,000 years later, 1,500 years later and wanted to build a Dome of the Rock there because Muhammad had a dream. He never actually was there in Jerusalem. He had a dream that he flew on a horse to that area. And so would you tell them, oh, it's the real area in the Ophel? Or would you tell them a big story, a big, huge lie, so big that modern society sucked it up and plagiarism runs rampant these days? Nobody checks the facts. So I think it's all hilarious because I know I'm never going to amount to anything. No one's going to listen to what I'm saying. Only a remnant of people ever will listen to what I'm saying because that's what the Father says. He says that to all the people who prophesize, which, as a prophet, I don't come up with anything from Yahweh. He doesn't speak to me. I look at his word and I tell you what his word says. And I don't use other books and I don't use other authors and other people out there selling their wares because they're selling their wares. I can't take anything they say as facts anymore because it's all about the almighty buck. I don't have almighty bucks to worry about. Never had a bunch because they've either given it away or I do things for free. So hopefully you can depend on me. Don't trust me. Test everything I say. All right. So we're back in the Word. We're at 120. We're in chapter 28, 13. It's about precept on precept. It just means we're going to pay attention in the millennium and their iron scepter rule from Yeshua about what he said line by line, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, book by book. And that's how it's done. You don't just pull a chapter out of the air and say, this is the way this says. I had a dream about sheets from heaven with moo cows on them and all kinds of pigs, and I can eat it all. It was about the whole thing. Yahweh was telling Peter, hey, Peter, and if you read the front and the back and the precepts and line by line, you understand it had nothing to do with pigs. It had to do with the fact that Yahweh's saying, you people think other people are animals, and I'm saying that they're all kosher. They're all good people. Go to them and bring them the good news. That's what he was saying. Goodness sakes. So, that's what happens chapter after chapter. Woe and woe and woe. All this is coming down. This is the entire history of Yeshua and all the woes coming. All the woes do not come from Satan. They come from the Father. All the horrible things come from the Father because he's going through some correction processing. And that's, as we say, that's the way it is. Okay? Now we go to chapter 45. Been keeping up on the reading? Chapter 46, Bel, B-E-L, bows down. Nebo stoops low. Their idols are borne by beasts of burden. Their images are carried about and burdensome, a burden for the weary. They steep, they bow down together. They're off, and everybody's in captivity. Verse 10. I make known, key words here, I make known the end from the beginning. Now, you've heard that many times from me, haven't you? From ancient times, what is still to come. So you read Revelation 20 and 21 and 22, and you see that there's a kingdom coming that will never end, that was perfect at one time, and will never become corrupted again as it did in Genesis 1, 2, and 3. When you read that, it's never going to happen again because sin has been defeated, finally and forever. So that's exactly, it's being mentioned again in the middle of the Bible. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. His ways are not our ways. Comment, though many have lived and died since before Shiloh, Yeshua came, and did not have access to the restored or the better covenant scripture, the new covenant, there is still no excuse for not having seen, heard, witnessed the word. Yahweh made himself known from the beginning. He was in the starry skies as a testimony itself. Looking outside. I can look outside tonight, and Saturn is right beside Jupiter. It's just fascinating to look at. I mean, they're just like beep, like that. Amazing thing to see. When you look and study the stars as the Magi did in the days of old, knowing when Yeshua was about to be born because of what they saw with the moon, the sun, the location, the Virgo, the constellation of Virgo, where Venus was, where Venus came through, where Venus ended up in the right hand of Boots, woman with child. They pretty well figured it out. Yeshua, the King of Kings, was going to be born, and they went right for it. And they went to Jerusalem, and they were heading for Bethlehem. Or were they? If they headed from the east straight to the west, they wouldn't be heading for Bethlehem. They wouldn't have stopped in Jerusalem. They would have gone to Bethlehem. But they stopped at Bethlehem for a reason. And they knew. They went to Nazareth. They went to Nazareth because they went to a house, not a manger. Do your reading. When we get there, do your reading. They went to Nazareth. And then from there, they went around north or went around south to stay away from Herod. And after that, Bethlehem was attacked because that's what the promise was. Well, they were. Yeshua was born in Bethlehem, but he went through the 8 days of circumcision. His mother went and waited for another 40 days, the 30 days of purification for her. And then, so that was now 20, 30, 40 days later, they went home. They went to a fall festival. They were done with the fall festival after 8 days. And so where would they go after 8 days? Go back to Bethlehem? To a wet nurse or so? No. They went to Nazareth. That's where the Magi went. Have you seen or heard that in any books? Read the word when you get there, and you'll see it. It will become so obvious to you. I'm giving you huge leaping hints. I'm giving you 20 to 30 to 40 years of research in a matter of just watching these videos. So I'm not giving you speeding through life. I'm just saying, okay, here's 40 years in less than X amount of hours going to take you to go through all this. I didn't have all this to go through. I had to walk it through. Walk it through and keep saying, what? What? That's not true. What? And all the pastors and ministers, everybody's got a different idea. All 30,000 denominations, they all have different ideas. And just like the Temple Mount, where it really, really was, right. I say this, but also for this reason, it is the very DNA, the minds of man right from the start. He is in nature right from the start. Looking out the window, and you can just see his majesty. It's everywhere. When you're in the faith, when you are walking in the faith, you can see his majesty. You can see the Aleph and the Toph. The Aleph and the, you can see the beginning and the end in these words that we're reading. That's what Isaiah does, and the pureness of this book as you read through it. Take your time. Is we're not going to be called forsaken anymore. Chapter 62. We're not. We're going to be. We're not going to be desolate. Shana. We're going to have pure hearts. That's what we can look forward to. That's what Isaiah goes through and brings to life everything of historical value and purpose and truth that we need to know to strengthen ourselves so that we can strengthen others. That's what the book of Isaiah does. Verse 22. I'm in chapter 6:6. As the new heavens and new earth that I make will endure before me, declares Yahweh, so will your name and descendants endure. From one new moon to another, and from one Shabbat to another, all mankind will come and bow down before me, says Yahweh. Now, this earth, this final earth, as we read in Revelation, will come to an end and will burn and be dispatched. So whether you were buried naturally, or you're cremated, or you're blown up in an explosion, or burned down in a fire, when your house catches on fire and no one saves you, Yahweh can resurrect anything. As today, people can find your DNA and create you to a certain way through a single strand of hair, you don't think the Father can do better than that? That's what I'm telling you. The key point of Isaiah, a promise reminded to those who hear and obey, to the generation suffering in the scattering of tribes, and those in Babylon. And I use the word Babylons because there's a lot of them today. The Redeemer will come. The Redeemer will restore the destined through his death, which he did once and for all. No more sacrificing, no more bloody guts. The unending heavens and earth will happen. A promise made in Genesis 15 is real. The promises made to Abraham is real. It's going to happen. But bad times are coming, and we want you to be prepared for it. I don't want to be responsible because I just didn't have the guts to say something. Okay? Just didn't have the guts. I'm telling you everything I can. Be strong in the Word. All right. See you at the next reading.